Welcome to 2025. Whew. I want to just get this in the light here. Okay. Catherine Chalmers' work resides at the intersection of art, science, and nature. It involves extensive research, field work, hours in the studio, and sometimes cringe-worthy roommates of the six-legged variety who apparently have a lot of sex and bite their partner's head off afterward. To quote Chalmers, "I refer to myself as an artist, but perhaps it's more accurate to say I'm part of an art collective. I never work alone. My colleagues just don't happen to be human." Catherine Chalmers' debut Michigan exhibition, Conifer Trees, Bark Beetles, and Fire, is a visual exploration into the dramas unfolding in America's western forests. The artist incorporates imagery and materials gathered during her many years living and working in the field in the Sierra Nevada and Rocky Mountains. The project is a quest of epic proportions. Chalmers finds meaning, expresses such vastness through the comings and goings and meanderings of a beetle 4 millimeters in size that the artist may never actually see. Chalmers' unique collaborations offer us the opportunity to wonder, to be awed in a time fraught with anxieties. There is interspecies ingenuity and surprise in the endless overlay of art and science. There is hope in all the care shown, the time taken in her creative inquiries. Chalmers' view into small worlds prompts deeper awareness of our indelible human imprint within the broader ecosystem. Her work breeds connection. It moves us. It is matter-of-fact and wildly imaginative. Chalmers' extraordinary practice inspires us in its acute examination of our own relationships, human and otherwise, our responsibilities in the big picture, far beyond the limitations of our small and sometimes puny selves. Catherine Chalmers holds a BS in engineering from Stanford University and an MFA in painting from the Royal College of Art in London. She has exhibited her artwork around the world, including MoMA PS1, Mass MoCA, the Drawing Center in New York, Kunsthalle Vienna, among others. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, The New Yorker, Art News, and Art Forum. 2 books of her work have been published by Aperture, Food Chain and American Cockroach. She has been awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship and a Rauschenberg Residency. And among her many accomplishments and accolades, in 2019, her film Leafcutters won the Gil Omen Art and Science Award at our very own Ann Arbor Film Festival. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you, there's nobody quite like her, Catherine Chalmers.
Thank you, Amanda, for the warm welcome and very kind introduction. Amanda's courage in showing my brand new untested project in the gallery, I'm deeply grateful for she took a leap of faith, and it's made a difference in how the project is started. And this debut will set the project in motion in a really good way. It's also a really wonderful pleasure to be at the University of Michigan, which is my father's proud alma mater, and an honor to be giving a talk in this distinguished lecture series. It's also wonderful to return to the Michigan Theater, where my film Safari debuted in 2008. I hope you're not squeamish, because you'll be seeing lots of insects, rodents, reptiles, and amphibians as I take you through 5 of my long-term multimedia projects where I weave together art, science, and nature. I have a particular fondness for insects, for they're the engineers and the architects of the terrestrial ecosystem. Without them, the environment would collapse into chaos in a matter of months. I often say that I collaborate with insects, but perhaps collaboration is too generous a term. In reality, I'm the one following them around, in the studio, the rainforest, and the mountains, and often in situations that defy comfort and perhaps sanity. Like many journeys, this one started out simple, the common housefly. Where it would lead, I had no idea. Prior to this project, I was a painter. And I had never raised and worked with live animals before. Houseflies was also my first photographic project, and I sensed that a camera was a better way to access their lives than paint on canvas. Though capturing such small, fast-moving creatures on film was a steep learning curve. Housefly, their very name ties them to us. Yet I knew nothing about this creature who spends its life so intimately beside our own. After 6 months of raising thousands of flies and spying on them through my macro lens, I discovered they had a lot of sex, and creative sex, and group sex. This is a female with 2 males. And they even seem to express joy after the fact. This is a female twirling her legs and wings around after she's mated with 5 different males. For all the buzzing they did, they were pretty laid back. Never once did I witness aggression or power struggles. Who knew that houseflies could be seen as a model of a domestic harmony? Having taken a deep dive into a single species, I wanted to widen my view and explore nature on a systems level. It occurred to me that civilization has been driven, by some degree, to the desire for us to remove ourselves from and be in control of a food chain. At first I thought, really? I'm going to raise and care for animals only to feed them to something else? Yet I realized that my discomfort pointed to a disconnect from one of the fundamental features of life on Earth, to eat and be eaten. It was easy to go to the art store and find new supplies. But insects, I had no idea where to get them. This project began before the internet really got going. And also, what could I raise within the confines of my loft in downtown New York City? I decided on a 3-step food chain. Caterpillars eating a tomato, praying mantis eating the caterpillar, and a frog eating the praying mantis. The praying mantis was undeterred by the presence of the frog, and it hopped on its head to better survey its territory. You know where this is going to end. But then the frog realized it was there, and that was the end of the praying mantis. The food chain exhibit traveled for years, and I heard that viewers took sides, invariably rooting for the underdog. This was particularly true for the Pinkies series that featured a baby snake eating a baby mouse. I received a lot of hate mail for this. Yet the uncomfortable truth is either the mouse gets eaten or the snake dies of starvation. There's no way around this, regardless of our opinions or sentiments. This is the installation of the Food Chain series at Mass MoCA, minus the Pinkies. The director of the museum said to a reporter from the Wall Street Journal who published it, "Not in my museum," referring to the Pinkies series. Yet in the fields outside the museum, snakes are applauded for eating mice, which, by the way, can have 12 babies every 3 weeks, and is capable of giving birth and getting pregnant later the very same day. His comment led me to understand that the truths of nature are often at odds with our cultural sensibilities. The collision of nature and culture is often a nexus of fear and confusion. Having touched on a few raw nerves, I decided to go down this path further. I spent the next 10 years raising the American cockroach, aka the water bug. And honestly, I'm really glad I'm over that. The project was an investigation into our adversarial relationship with nature. I could think of few animals more hated than the cockroach. For me, however, they became a conduit to the negative and often violent relationship we have with the animal world. Yet for all the fear and loathing the roach generates, it isn't venomous, it doesn't sting or bite, or carry the dangerous pathogens that flies and mice regularly do. There's nothing life-threatening about the cockroach. Its menace is largely symbolic, not biological. The American cockroach, Paraplaneta americana, was misnamed by Linnaeus. It comes from Africa and has followed Homo sapiens as they've colonized the globe. Our infrastructure is now its natural habitat. They're no longer found in the wild. With over 4,000 cockroach species, only a handful have figured out the advantages of living with us. I photographed the cockroach's life cycle in its now native habitat, our home. Eating, it can eat just about anything. Drinking, which it usually does in the kitchen or the bathroom. And sex. The couple stayed in this position for 45 minutes. Who knew? The female is very choosy about who she mates with because she mates once and is pregnant for life. I think houseflies have more fun. And if she doesn't find a male she likes, then she'll reproduce on her own. She's capable of laying clones of herself, parthenogenesis. It's a handy trick in the game of long-term survival. And birth, the egg case is about the size of a puffed up grain of rice. And molting, the magical transformation of adolescence to adulthood, where the roach can now mate and fly for the first time. I have a theory that early Homo sapiens living in caves probably did not find the cockroach as objectionable as we do now. Certainly they had more dangerous animals to fear. I speculate that our hatred of the roach has grown in proportion to the walls we have erected between ourselves and the natural world. These animals are some of the few that can cross over and challenge our boundaries. At a fundamental level, I think their trespass upsets our confidence that we can successfully control nature to suit our needs and desires. And what we don't like, we kill. Though usually not burning at the stake or electric chair. It's my Tesla coil. And a hanging. Death ties us to the roach in a unique way. We kill them, they survive. We kill ourselves, and they will survive. My executions were enacted with already dead bugs. This series is not about the sufferings humans have endured at the hands of humans, but what other species have endured because of us. What are the aesthetics of our empathy towards animals? Would we like the roach better if it looked like a ladybug? Or perhaps a bird of paradise? I painted and decorated the top shell of my live roaches to disguise them as insects in a garden, looking pretty, pollinating flowers. The idealized vision of good nature. But most insects are predators, savagely ripping apart fellow insects, or in the case of the cockroach, recycling waste and debris. Humans have a bias against scavengers, and that the American cockroach can scavenge off of us further fuels our hatred of them. People seem to prefer animals that are soft and furry as opposed to hard and shiny. Animals with big eyes as opposed to thin antennae. But what do these qualities have to do with the animal's importance to the ecosystem? It points to the subjectivity, perhaps arbitrariness, of how we think about animals in general. Yet these aesthetic judgments we make have real consequences for the natural world. The cockroach tree brings together two opposites of our response to nature: the reverence we hold for trees and the revulsion we feel for roaches. By combining the two, the work underscores the interconnectedness of life, highlighting that both trees and insects are integral to the forest ecology. There are 5 short films in the American Cockroach Project. I only have time to show one, Safari. Safari is the urban cockroach's return to the wild. But of course, going back to nature is not without peril. I raised the 20 species that populated the roach's safari and shot it in my studio over 2 years. Leafcutters was the first project where I worked in the field where the animals lived. And it was a huge leap for me. Every winter for nearly 10 years, I filmed, photographed, and followed the fates of more than a dozen colonies of leafcutter ants on the Osa Peninsula and Costa Rica. I had dreamed of working with the ants when I saw them 8 years before on a trek through the rainforest with a biologist. Yet working thousands of miles away from my studio with millions of wild ants was a logistical, technical, financial, as well as a conceptual challenge. Unlike the cockroach, whose identity is intertwined with culture, leafcutter ants are overwhelmingly nature. What was the thread that linked their world to ours? I'm always searching for those pressure points where the non-human and the human world meet. As the project developed, I came to understand that the real reward for lying countless hours on the forest floor was observing the dynamics of ant society. One of the principal characteristics humans and ants share is our socialness, and at the heart of the social species is communication. Ants invented an interactive networked form of communication that rivals the internet and predates it by millions of years. The ants constantly converse with one another, using pheromones, sound, and vibration. They're nature's ultimate mobile communication devices. This project developed at the dawn of social media, and I began to see that our own patterns of communication were becoming more networked and participatory, like theirs. To quote from the eminent biologist E.O. Wilson, these ants are the most complex social creatures other than humans. They're the charismatic mini-fauna, the Einsteins of the insect world. The ants have eerie parallels to human society, and this became the conceptual heart of my project. As the principal herbivore of the rainforest, leafcutter ants are a dominant species, and like us, influence the grand structure of all other biological systems in their habitat. The ants farm, communicate, and collaborate. They also colonize, battle, and destroy. Leafcutter ants live in underground metropolises with up to 8 million members where temperature and humidity are precisely controlled. It's a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers that can occupy 50 square meters and be 10 meters deep. The ants cut vegetation from high in the forest canopy and carry the pieces in their mandibles across the forest floor to their underground colony, traveling up to 100 meters on trails meticulously cleaned by them. From this plant material, they cultivate a fungus, which is their food source. They're farmers. The project is in 4 parts, focusing on 4 supposedly unique human traits: language, ritual, art, and war. And the narrative themes of the project aim to blur the boundaries between culture and nature. I only have time to briefly focus on 2 parts of the project: language and war. And each section of the project has video, photography, and drawing. In the video, We Rule, the ants carry language that is in keeping with their dominant status in the forest. I shot this first film in Panama before changing locations to Costa Rica. And this is a 20-foot photographic scroll of the ants descending a tree at night, carrying pieces of leaves and also letters in their mandibles. Over the 20 feet, it was only unrolled in that installation, 11 feet. Over the 20 feet, the letters spell out, colonize the earth. Leafcutter ants are one of the few species to wage organized warfare against their own kind. They even have different strategies depending upon the location and severity of the war. If the battle is close to home, the big soldiers will come out to defend the colony. If the war is far away, the small and mid-sized workers will do the fighting. Ant wars are hard to find in the forest. The battles spread out into the leaf litter. In order to film and photograph these mini gladiators, I placed small white sheets around the area they were fighting. During the day, the ants went about their orderly business cutting leaves, quickly habituating to the new surfaces and ignoring them. But every night, the bellicose colony attacked its neighbor. Though many ants were slaughtered, the colonies did not fight to the death. 3 weeks into the war, the aggressor called it quits. This is the war film, and like all wars, it's pretty gruesome. And these are portraits of some of the warriors, which, like all members of an ant colony, are female. For my show at the Drawing Center in New York, I created a mural with thousands of hand-drawn ants cutting a hole in the gallery wall and carrying the fragments across the length of the museum. And down into their underground colony in the bedrock of Lower Manhattan. To me, the mural is the ants' revenge. The colony cuts up the gallery architecture in response for us cutting down its rainforest home. The damage done to nature reemerges here as a wound in the walls of culture. And this is a 16-panel drawing of the tunnels and chambers of an underground leafcutter ant colony. I returned each year to the same spot on the Osa Peninsula because the configuration of trees and plants supported more large colonies of leafcutter ants than I had seen anywhere else. It's a virtual queendom of ants, where the colonies behaved like empires in the Game of Thrones. Some colonies were peaceful, and others went out of their way to attack their neighbors. This is a map drawing based on the detailed field notes I took every year, where I identified the ant species, the size of the colony, and the types of plants and trees they were harvesting. After 10 years of working in the field, I was hooked. I can't imagine ever returning to a studio-based practice. For the past 6 years, I've been experimenting and developing a body of work that explores the complex and increasingly destructive relationship between bark beetles, fire, and conifer trees in the high alpine forests of the American West. This work is deeply personal because I've spent a significant portion of my life in the Sierra Nevada and Rocky Mountains, where I've witnessed firsthand the changes and the staggering tree mortality. Although the bark beetle problem is enormous, the insect itself is tiny, only about 4 millimeters, and rarely seen. For the hundreds of miles I've hiked and thousands of vertical feet climbed, I've actually never seen one in the wild. Until human intervention, bark beetles played a vital role in managing the forest, acting like top predators, culling old and weak trees, and helping to maintain a sustainable density of trees. Likewise, fire is an integral part of Western forest ecology. High-frequency, low-intensity fires clean out the underbrush and open up spaces for new growth. Many conifer species depend on fire to open their cones. But 100 years of fire suppression, clear-cut logging, and now climate change have transformed bark beetles and fire from beneficial elements to destructive forces. This map shows the scope of the problem, and the devastation has only increased since then. The needles of beetle-killed trees turn red from the top down. Red is a sign of health in humans, but a mark of death in a conifer tree. This shows the scale of the problem. This isn't a photo of a deciduous forest in fall, but a conifer forest in the summer. There are hundreds of bark beetle species that are indigenous to the West, and each species carves a distinctive pattern into the phloem, right underneath the bark. This unique engraved design is known as a gallery, and scientists can identify this species of beetle by the artwork it leaves behind. The tiny channels the beetles carve disrupt the tree's ability to transport nutrients and water. I've spent years hiking through beetle-infested forests, photographing both the damaged trees and the intricate designs left by the beetles. This pattern is a Douglas fir bark beetle egg gallery, the western balsam beetle egg gallery, a fir engraver beetle, and a mountain pine beetle. And these tiny, perfectly round holes are made by newly hatched beetles as they emerge from the bark to fly off, find a tree, and start the cycle all over again. These works coming up are all in the show. And these are what I call the beetle carvings, where I hand carve the specific beetle patterns into the photographs of the very trees and landscapes that the beetles infested. This is a mountain pine beetle gallery on an 800-year-old limber pine. And this is a detail. In collaboration with a photo lab in New York, we developed a technique to print on a thick wood panel. Using woodblock carving tools, I hand engrave the beetle's destructive artistry directly into the photograph and wood panel, mimicking the beetle's designs. The vertical channels are carved by the females as she deposits her eggs. The horizontal lines are made by the larvae as they feed, and the larger gouges are from woodpeckers hunting for the larvae. And these are western balsam beetle egg galleries on a group of South Alpine firs. And this is a fir engraver beetle pattern on a photograph I took from an 11,000-foot peak in the Sawtooth National Forest. This area has been plagued by several bark beetle species. And a photograph of lodgepole pines drilled through with the exit holes of newly hatched mountain pine beetles. Typically, bark beetles only attack weak and old trees, but with so many trees now under severe stress, entire forests have become vulnerable to infestation. Millions of acres of beetle-killed trees increase the risk of high-intensity megafires, fires so hot they scorch the organic matter in the soil. These fires are no longer regenerative, but destructive. This is from the 2024 Bench Lake fire in the Sawtooth Mountains. And this is from the 1988 Yellowstone fire, which burned nearly 40% of the park. And after nearly 40 years, the conifer trees in many places have not grown back, and maybe never will. I've been hiking into the aftermath of several local megafires to photograph the blackened, broken, and tangled remains. I also collect chunks of the charcoal from the burnt trees. From these photographs, I create detailed paintings of the burnt landscape. Then, using a custom medium made from the charcoal I've gathered, gum arabic, and water, I douse it with fire-colored watercolors, which seemingly reignites the blaze and engulfs the artwork below. Rising temperatures and decreased precipitation compromise the tree's ability to produce enough resin to fight disease and ward off beetle infestations. Each bubble of resin you see here is called a pitch pocket and is the tree's attempt to repel an invading bark beetle. In keeping with my uses of materials sourced from the forest, I collect tree resin and have developed a method of transforming it into a honey-like medium. This technique allows me to paint the beetle using the very substance the tree produces to defend itself against them. I painted the life cycle of the mountain pine beetle. The small bits that you see in the paintings are debris and insects that have been captured in the tree's sticky resin. Given enough time and pressure, the resin will fossilize into amber. Mating, which it does underneath the bark. In the egg gallery, the pregnant female carves a thin channel up the tree and deposits her eggs in alternating sides of this thin channel. She positions the head of the larva facing outwards, that's the rounded part, so that when they hatch, they move uniformly away from the central groove. And the larva, which is tiny, and the pupa, and the beetle flying away to start the cycle again. Although I've worked across media, from painting, drawing, sculpture, photography, video, my artistic practice has been focused on a central issue: how to confront and challenge an anthropocentric point of view. Humanity has been drawing lines in the sand forever, defining what is in and what is out. Maybe now, at the dawn of the Anthropocene, is a good time to reconsider those lines and what lives on the other side. I think our culture is far richer with the consideration and inclusion of other life forms. Thank you.